Hi, let's get ready for a approximately 10-minute guided breath meditation. So here you are sitting at your computer screen, and just come forward to the edge of your seat. So you're sitting right up onto your sit bones. Your feet are flat on the floor. You can place your hands either face down or facing up on your lap. And then just gently close your eyes. Sitting up nice and tall with your eyes closed. Bring your attention to your breath. Now at this moment, we're not trying to change the breath, but just simply become aware of how you are being breathed at this moment. Perhaps there's some tightness, perhaps your breath is shallow. Just be aware. And then become aware of your body. If there's any tightness, tension, bring your attention to those areas of tightness or tension and consciously relax your body. So you're relaxing your jaw, your forehead, the shoulders, your entire body. And then bring your attention back to your breath. And let's together deepen the breath. And as we're doing this, you're bringing calm, a calmness to your body, relaxing the body. So we will inhale for a count of 4 and exhale for a count of 4. So at this moment, we're just going to even out our breath. And for those who are beginning, just beginning their practice in meditation, you may wish to actually count out your inhale and count out your exhale. So I'll count with you for the first 2 or 3 breaths, and then you can count just on your own. And for those who have been practicing meditation for a while, it's just simply, consciously aware of your breath as you inhale and as you exhale. Feeling the breath moving in and out of your body. Feeling the breath as you breathe in through the nose and exhale through the nose. So let's empty our breath, empty our lungs with an exhale. Then inhale, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. And continue like this on your own. Notice where you're breathing when you inhale, where the breath is going in the body. See if you can actually inhale through the belly. So when you inhale, your belly rises. And when you exhale, your belly falls inward. If you become lost in thoughts, just gently guide your attention back to your breath. Now let's increase the inhale and the exhale to the count of 6. You may notice as you deepen your breathing, and you inhale, it goes into the belly, into your chest, and rises to the shoulders. And as you exhale, your shoulders fall, your chest falls, and then your belly falls. Now just see if you can just stop the counting and simply be aware. And feel your belly rise as you inhale, the chest rise, the shoulders rise, and feel your chest fall, your belly fall as you exhale. Feel the body relax as your breath evens out. Notice the space around your breath. Notice the space in this moment. And when you're ready, you can slowly open your eyes, taking in the world of form. still keeping some attention on your breath. And as you go about your day, just practice keeping some attention inward on your breath. And if you feel like you just want to keep sitting here, meditating on your breath, feel free to do so.
But the consciousness is not form, and what we perceive as space, can we even say that space exists? Well, not really. It makes existence possible, but it doesn't exist as such because space is not anything. It's a total mystery. We can look into outer space at night, clear sky, and then you look and there's the vastness of space, and what is awe-inspiring when you look out at night and the sky is clear. Yes, it's incredible to see the thousands of stars that you can see with your naked eye, the faint luminous band of what our own galaxy, the Milky Way, which goes along there, exists in total, absolute stillness. Those were my first meditations when I was 15, looking up. I didn't know it was a meditation because it stopped my mind briefly. The most awe-inspiring thing is not so much the infinite, almost infinite number of celestial bodies. I mean, most of this, what we call stars, are suns, with the exception of the few planets that are part of our solar system. Most of these so-called stars are suns, and the luminous band of the Milky Way is millions of suns, creating just the luminosity. You can't distinguish individual suns. But that's not the most awe-inspiring thing about when looking up into. The most awe-inspiring thing is the vastness and the absolute stillness of it, and the vastness of space. Oh, you can't even start thinking about it. It's totally impossible to grasp. And yet, what is that? Nobody knows actually what it is. Space. It doesn't exist, because exist means it manifests, it stands out. As I mentioned before, ex means out, exist, to stand out. Space enables things to exist. The important thing is the inner space is just as vast as the outer space, but it does not have an extension in this dimension. And that is the inner space of consciousness. And perhaps the outer space is an externalization of what we call consciousness. It enables everything to be, is not subject to time. So when you sit in a room, let's go back to the room, you become aware of the content of the room, And then you become aware of the space of the room. That's the essence. If you were asking the room, let's imagine for a moment the room is a living entity. If you ask the room, can you describe yourself? Can you find out about what you are? Then, well, I am the furniture, the content makes up the room, and the ceiling, and whatever the room contains. The room would describe itself through the content and through the boundaries: ceiling, floor, walls, chairs, tables, lamps. And is that all? You can ask the room, and then the room would say, yeah, I think so. I've looked at everything, and that's who I am. That's what I am. And then you say, well, you might have overlooked something, and that's the space, which is the essence of the room. Otherwise, there would be nothing, wouldn't be a room. So if the room became aware of its own essence as space, that would be an awakening. Now, the analogy, of course, the room is you. And if I asked you to describe yourself, you would normally begin by describing yourself in terms of the content of your mind, or the content of your mind, memories, concepts, thoughts, emotions, your past, all the stuff that makes up your personality. That's all the content of your mind. And that's how people usually perceive themselves. They perceive themselves as the content. They are the content of their mind. And they are unaware of the essence of who they are, which is not content, which is beyond content. That's the space of consciousness. And so this is like the room. And then you ask, haven't you overlooked something? You've talked about yourself in terms of content. Who are you? And then you have to think, okay, I forgot something. The presence that makes it all possible. And that's an immediate realization. You can't understand it. You can only be it. And you are it. You cannot realize it except when there's a gap in the stream of thinking, even if it's short, like now. Thinking subsides for a moment, and it doesn't subside because you're falling asleep. That could happen too. But thinking subsides and alertness remains. And then the miracle happens inside you, which is the next step in the evolution of human consciousness, and that's connected to planetary consciousness. The next step is the transcendence of thinking. Transcendence means that you don't think anymore. It means you realize something that's beyond thinking. It includes thinking, but it's beyond it. That's inseparable from who you are. It's vaster, much vaster than thinking. And then thinking still continues to fulfill an important function, but a different function from before. It's no longer self-serving. Self-serving thinking is egoic thinking. It's no longer compulsive, and it's no longer addictive. It no longer gives you the foundation for your sense of who you are. It's simply a wonderful tool for creating, a wonderful, extremely powerful tool for manifesting and creating and giving form to things, participating consciously in the act of creation that the universe is engaged in. So it's a wonderful thing, but unless you have transcended thinking, you are at the mercy of thinking. And in fact, even to say, I think, would be a lie if you haven't transcended thinking, because if you say, I think, it implies that there's some kind of volition, but there isn't, because if you're completely unconscious, if there's zero awareness in you, thinking happens to you. You don't do it, it's being done to you. You have thoughts appear in your mind and you can't help it. The types of thoughts that appear in your mind depend on the way your mind has been conditioned. So depending what part of the planet you come from or what kind of background you had when you were growing up, that determines the type of your conditioning. Doesn't matter what the type of your conditioning is, the fundamental fact remains, your thinking in the absence of awareness is totally conditioned, and it is an involuntary process. And there are still millions of humans on the planet, billions probably, who are at the mercy of their thought processes, which are totally determined by the conditioning of their mind, their personal and cultural, etc., background where they grew up. And so they think, they do things, they think things, and they think it's them. It's the thought processes inside them being at work. So they're not thinking, they are being thought by thought. Thought thinks you up as an entity, a kind of mind-made entity. I was putting away some clothes this morning, hanging up some clothes and folding something, and we talked yesterday about somebody asking a question about repetitive things. You get up in the morning, you do your repetitive tasks every day, and most of one's life consists of little tasks. There's rarely anything big, and if there is, it doesn't last long. What would be big? A wedding, a funeral, or in North America, Thanksgiving, turkey dinner, Christmas, a promotion, or suddenly they write about you in People magazine. Hopefully something good. Or some big thing, you're going to talk or give a talk to a few hundred people. But even a seemingly big thing consists of just one little thing at a time. Now, if you had the idea, this is just a little example, I'm coming back to the clothes in a little while. One could say that folding up clothes and hanging up shirts is an insignificant thing that one would only do in order to get somewhere else. And in this case, if I thought, okay, I have to get this done because this really big thing is waiting for me, all these people are waiting for me to talk, give a big talk, then in the meantime, all the little things leading up to it would be regarded as something that you have to get out of the way or pay little attention to because I have this big thing coming up. And then this big thing coming up is a mind form, would become a mind form, big thing called people wanting me to say something significant, but who knows if I can say something significant. That would have led to not only not paying much attention to the little things, but also most probably to a sense of anxiety, because the mind has created a big thing. Now, if I had that, then it would not be enjoyable to do what I do, because if every time I got anxious before a talk, that would be dreadful. I'd rather not do it. So why is there no anxiety? Because I realize even a so-called big talk consists of little things. You approach it, they pick me up in a buggy, and then drive, and then I step out, and then it's really one step at a time. And then I sit in a little room for a few minutes and look around and breathe, and then I come here. It's still one little step at a time, and then I sit here, and then one word comes out, and then another word comes out. It's just, that too is just small. It's only the mind that creates differences and says, I'm waiting for the next big thing. And for other people, a big thing could be the next vacation they look forward to. In the meantime, they're just trying to get to that future moment. Or getting married, looking for someone to get married, finding the right relationship. That would be the big thing, wouldn't it, if I could find that, the partner, the ideal partner for me, and then you're looking towards that, and in the meantime, little attention is paid to the intervening periods. But the strange thing is, most of your life is the intervening periods. 95%, no, 99% is something that happens while you wait for something else to happen. And it's an unconscious way to live. So, as I was folding up my clothes, and I realized how extremely pleasurable the activity is, and not because of the simple movements of putting it away, but there's an underlying stillness with it that goes with that. And so that as you notice that, as you do little things, in other words, 90-something% of your life, if you're aware not only of what you are doing, of course, yes, that's part of present moment awareness, is to give attention to what you're doing, so that the doing is not just a means to an end. The greatest fallacy and big dysfunction in people's lives is that almost all they're doing is a means to an end. That implies future, of course, is a means to an end, and unconsciously the end is regarded as more important than the means. But, of course, the end, which is in the future, is always in the future. The moment it comes, it's the present moment. But the mind pattern that has lodged itself firmly in people's minds is always that the next thing, and it's the thing that I really need to get to. So the moment the so-called future comes, it appears as the present moment. Something else, almost simultaneously or very quickly afterwards, something else appears looming up in the so-called future. Oh, I need to get there. Of course, there are things that you need to achieve and go towards, and that involves time and so on. But if that absorbs almost 100% of your attention, or even if it absorbs 80% of your attention, that's you're out of balance, because if future absorbs 80% of your attention, you only have 20% of your attention left for the one thing that is ever real in your life, which is the present moment. So the present moment is just, okay. So that's why many people don't actually, very rarely feel really comfortable with the present moment. It's rare for people to regard the present moment even in a friendly way. Many people live continuously in some kind of almost confrontational or denying relationship with the present moment. And then their entire life is then not aligned with the present moment, which is life itself, because the only place where life can appear to you is in the present moment. There is nothing else ever. And so your life is not aligned, your life with a small L is not aligned with life with a capital L. And that out of alignment creates an unhappy existence. And millions of people leading such an unhappy existence create an entire culture or civilization, every aspect of which reflects back to you that basically unhappy state that all those millions are in. So all the things that the culture produces, the civilization produces, the structures, the economic structures, political structures, educational, and so on, they will contain these elements of that state of consciousness that created them. So that's the dysfunctional element in politics, in economics, in educational system, and so on. Which all those things that you can see are not working very well, because they are products of a certain collective state of consciousness. And the collective state of consciousness is made up of millions of individuals that produces the collective state of consciousness. So if you try to tackle exclusively the products of that collective consciousness in the form of the economic structures, the political educational system, and so on, then you're working only on one end of the spectrum, and it's not the causal you're working on effect. And what you can do is limited. Yes, you can initiate changes, but what is the state of consciousness in the individuals and in you as you try to initiate changes? So the causal is the individual, so that the individual no longer lives in a way that produces unhappiness and is dysfunctional. This mind-made sense of self is also much more focused on the negative than the positive. To be free, you awaken to who you are beyond your history and your life situation. The hardest knowledge, obviously, is self-knowledge. That's why the ancient Greeks, like Plato Socrates, the main one, said his main dictum is know thyself. Know thyself. That's the most important thing in life, Socrates said. By the way, he lived about the same time as the Buddha. He said the most important thing is know thyself. And that was inscribed at the Temple of Delphi in ancient Greece. Know thyself. Another strange inscription, and that takes us now to where we are going. On the same temple inscribed was saying that for a long time people couldn't interpret. They thought something was missing. The other words on the temple was, so on the other side of the temple, you are in Greek. You are. And so the archaeologists looked and said, there's something missing here. You are, and they tried, is there another word that you are? But there was no other word. You are. Know thyself. You are. Oh. Then at some point, somebody understood what it probably meant. It was pointing to a deeper dimension of who you are. But the real knowing yourself is not just knowing the personality. That's only one level. It's not the deepest level of knowing yourself. It's important too to know all the stuff that runs you, that operates in you as a conditioning of your mind. This kind of thing people go to a psychoanalyst for. They want to know thyself. What the psychoanalyst or psychiatrist, I don't know, psychoanalyst can do for you is he can show you all kinds of things from your past. And if you go to a psychoanalyst, you can go for many years. Some people go for 20 years, 20, 30 years to a psychoanalyst, once or twice a week. Okay, and the story goes on, and discover more and more intricate things about your childhood. And then what happened? And how did you feel about that? And then what did your mother say when you, and then up to a point it's helpful, but then it goes on. And you get trapped in that level. And it becomes more and more complex. One level of knowing yourself is knowing how your ego operates, being able to witness it. For example, as I mentioned, in an argument, you become emotional and you witness it. Oh, so another faculty is there behind the conditioned mind that can observe what you're doing and say, oh, you're becoming very angry about nothing. So maybe you're shouting, but in the back there's something that has arisen. It's an awareness. It says you're shouting about nothing. You're witnessing what the ego is doing. This means that the beginning of the end of the ego. The witnessing faculty is the awareness. You are. So if you translate it into you, you'd have to say, I am. Okay. I am. And what am I? So let's investigate now this level of deeper identity. I call it the deep I as opposed to the surface I. The deep I, to find that which is underneath the person. And in order to find that, the stream of thinking that sustains that personal sense of self needs momentarily come to a cessation. And that's why I started this evening with observing your breath, because that can bring about a brief sensation in the stream of thinking. And in that moment, awareness remains, consciousness remains, but it doesn't become thought. And this is a very strange thing to realize from the egoic point of view. So what, says the ego? It doesn't realize that that is of extraordinary importance to find that, to discover that dimension that is deeper than the egoic self, that is a dimension of consciousness before it becomes thought. So the most vital realization for you is to realize that there are spaces in your mind that you just need to discover, or really ultimately only one space. You discover that there is a space in you where you can be conscious without needing to think, but you're very alert. You're completely here. Another word for it, some words can be helpful as pointers. Another word for it is stillness. You discover a dimension of stillness within you. Stillness means consciousness without the movement of thought. Wow. And you can still perceive everything. In fact, you perceive it more acutely, more deeply, when you are not labeling mentally thought, when you are not labeling mentally what you're perceiving. You can look around, flower, room, sky. Everything is there. You know what you're looking at without calling it anything, without concept. And you haven't gone to sleep, because normally humans becoming free of thinking, the only way they can do that when they haven't awakened, they have to go to sleep, or they have to take some kind of drug that slows down your mind. There may be a place for drugs in certain cases, sacred surroundings. Don't need to go there, it takes too long. But the discovery that stillness, which is unconditioned consciousness, which is deeper than the person, is always there, but it's covered up by the noise of the mind. And you are completely identified with this surface movement. So you can't find the deeper self, where there is enormous peace and a deep sense of aliveness that gives you everything that you had been looking for as a surface egoic entity in this realm of this physical realm, or this even psychological realm. You were looking for that, never finding this ultimate sense of being home, having arrived, you feeling at home in the universe, rather than being alienated. Alienation is a very common mental illness for millions of humans, especially modern day humans. So the most important discovery for you is discover there's something deeper in you than the person. They're not separate in the same way that the ripple on the surface of the ocean is not separate from the ocean. The ripple is a surface phenomenon. It's something that the ocean does. And you are something that consciousness, universal, the one universal consciousness that pervades the entire universe, but is transcendent to this universe, it is something that that consciousness does. It creates the image of a person, like the ocean produces a ripple or a wave on the surface. And there goes a little ripple, and it has a name. Whatever name you have for you as the ripple, That's me. And the ripple is uneasy because it's surrounded by many, many other ripples, and you never know what they want. Some ripples may be dangerous, they don't want to maybe defend yourself, and others you think, if I incorporate this ripple into myself, I become a bigger ripple. I need you. In other words, you fall in love. I'm not talking about real love. I'm talking about falling in love, which is come. I need you. Don't you dare leave me, though. So the ripple leads a very uneasy existence because it doesn't know that it is part of the ocean. You know by now that I'm talking about you as the human. Every human is a ripple on the surface of being, the vastness of being, of consciousness. Partners evolve sometimes at different speed, the evolution of consciousness, and some may not evolve for a while at all. So it's possible that suddenly the awakened consciousness comes into you, and your partner remains where he or she is, and you go into enormous presence and aliveness and newness, and you still see he or she is still no change. And then wait a little and see, it is quite possible that your state transmits itself if there's even the slightest degree of readiness in the other. The fact that you do not strengthen his or her mind anymore by opposing his or her mind, the vital thing, don't oppose the mind. Can express your viewpoint without opposition. Something may happen, an opening may happen, or it is possible that you may have to separate, and it may be that the other partner will leave you because it is no longer satisfying to live with you without the drama. The pain body, of course, many of you know about the pain body, and hopefully not only know about the pain body, but have direct knowledge, immediate knowledge of your own pain body. The pain body, of course, is the favorite place for the pain body, which is the old accumulated pain, which is an energetic, almost an entity that lives in you, that lives on emotional suffering. It loves its vibrational frequency. It thrives on close relationships. That's where it gets its food, most of its food. There isn't much you can do if your pain body needs food. It can't do much when you go to the supermarket and only see the cashier for half a minute or 1 minute. Even there it could happen. I've been standing here for 10 minutes and you've been talking to this customer instead of serving me. But favorite place for pain bodies to renew themselves are families and intimate relationships. That's their place. And so you will know your partner has a pain body, which occasionally takes them over and makes them say and do things that One could say they're completely out of character. Well, yes, it's unconscious. It comes as a surprise when you start living with a person and you've experienced their pain body after perhaps 2 or 3 weeks for the first time. And that used to be the big surprise when people got married. Nowadays, often people live together for a while before they get married, so they already know that the other has a pain body. It's good. And you haven't committed yourself yet. You can still get out. But what a dreadful thing when you marry somebody, start living with that person, and 2 or 3 weeks after the honeymoon, a totally different person is suddenly there. A person who's in a deeply negative energy field, says hurtful things, misinterprets what you do. You say, who did I marry? And you think this must be the real person. Maybe I married, this was all a disguise. The real person is coming out now. That's, of course, not the case. It's not the real person, it's the pain body. And where's yours? Oh. Your partner's pain body wants yours, wants your emotional reaction. Pain body is an emotional aspect of ego. It's part of the egoic consciousness. Pain body needs to be recognized in yourself and the other as it arises. It's not usually there all the time. That would be dreadful, but it comes periodically. And then you go back to normal for a while, and then it comes back. And so you need to recognize it, be there as the space for it, be the presence in the other and in yourself. Perhaps the most destructive thing in relationships is the pain body that people carry around with them, that takes them over and makes them, even sometimes people who are already awakening, they still periodically get taken over by their pain body and completely lose consciousness, are then completely identified with that energy field. It uses their mind. It rises up when the pain body needs to renew itself, feed on somebody else's reaction. It moves into your mind, and every thought you think is the thought of the pain body. It completely, the emotional energy field takes possession of your mind, which is probably, if you're not conscious, is probably problematic enough as it is, even without the pain body. But then the pain body rises into your mind, and then if you observe it in your partner, because if it happens to you, you can't observe it anymore. The presence is lost. But you can observe it in another more easily. Every word they say to you is the pain body speaking through them, as if an entity, and in a way it is like that, had taken possession of them and is now using their mind and speaking through their mind. You need to know that so that you do not react as if that were who they are. So that is where a degree of compassion comes in, when you recognize that they are being possessed at that moment by this entity called pain body. That helps to know it. But this entity is very cunning and knows exactly how to get an emotional reaction from you. It will accuse you, blame you, it knows your weakest points, and it will go in there and press all the right buttons until you finally go, oh, oh, and your own pain body has awakened, and you're in the grip of it, and you start shouting, and whatever form the pain body takes. Or you may be present enough, and so that you don't get taken over by your own pain body. But even being in the grip of the pain body, if your awakening if the new consciousness is arising, there is a good chance that at the back there is still an observing presence. And you are able to say to your partner, I think my pain body has just come up. I can feel it. There it is. And if your partner's pain body has not come up yet, then he or she can help you to stay present with it. You can address it, see, it happened just at this moment when you said that, or that happened, that, and now I can feel it. Okay, let's stay with it. You may also point out to your partner that the pain body has come up when you observe it, and if you're lucky, there's still enough awareness there to recognize it. But the pain body is very cunning. It may even be that your own pain body is coming up and you're accusing your partner that their pain body is there. Whoa, very cunning. And of course, the interesting thing is if somebody says to you, there's your pain body, if there's a reaction, then he or she was right. What do you mean, my pain body? If there is an open looking, you say, that's my pain body? Okay, well, okay, let me just feel into this. Then probably wasn't. My pain body? Well, that's strange. Didn't feel like a pain body, but maybe. It can be a helpful thing to be in unusual surroundings because it's easier to be more present in unusual surroundings. That's the advantage of traveling. And that's why, as I've written somewhere, many people feel more alive when they travel. And when they're at home, their surroundings are so familiar that they lose presence completely. They don't see things anymore. They go from where they live to their office or wherever it is, done it so many times, they don't see it anymore. And you would be surprised even at home, your usual surroundings. You might have a painting on your walls and haven't looked at it in the past 3 years. Might be very beautiful. Or your garden or the plants in there. So this is the familiarity can lead to a kind of semi-sleep-like state. And when you're traveling, you go, oh. And the good thing is you might not even have a name for all the new things you see. At home you know what everything is called. But here you see things, you might see a weird animal. The mind stops because you can't name it, and that's a wonderful thing. Or you see trees that you haven't seen before, and you go, oh. Or you might say to your friend, look at that. And you might notice in the moment of looking at that, you are not naming it in your mind because you don't know what it's called. So there's a moment, a few seconds of just being present. be the presence rather than the naming person. So it helps to be wide awake to your sense perceptions, because that is one way of coming into the present moment, which is why we are here, because there is more to the present moment than we realize most of the time. There's more to it. It's the access point to the deeper dimension within yourself. So as a general theme, underlying theme, I recommend, surprisingly, that you practice being in the present moment. Although you've been taken out of your usual surroundings, you have carried with you something else, and of course that's your mind that travels with you wherever you go. That is perhaps the meaning of a book that somebody wrote. I believe the title is "Wherever You Go, There You Are." So wherever you go, you carry your mind and the conditioning of your mind with you. So that is the challenge here, to transcend the conditioning of your mind, the habitual way of interpreting, the habitual way of reacting to things, habitual mind patterns. If a mind pattern in you is that you frequently and very quickly become discontent with where you are, if that's a pattern in you, then that pattern will arise here also. If your mind pattern is one that loves complaining and finding fault with things, then it's very likely that very quickly this mind pattern will appear here also. So you get surprising things that your expectations are not met in various ways. And that is a challenge to the mind, to the conditioned mind, because the conditioned mind wants its expectations met. And if they're not met, it gets uneasy, restless, irritated, angry, starts talking about what's wrong, either silently in your mind or to others. And if others can agree with you, then it's even better. Or you can go on the internet and then you get 1,000 people agreeing with you. I'm not saying if there's something really wrong you shouldn't do something to rectify it. So if something is leaking in your room, You say, no, I'm not going to say anything because I'm not supposed to complain. No, of course. Say there's something there that needs to be rectified. It's not a complaint, it's just information. Complaint means there is an emotion behind it, and the emotion says this should not be happening. Then it becomes a complaint. Or it's your fault. Then it becomes a complaint. If it's simply presenting information, it's not a complaint, it's just a fact. And then the question is can anything be done about it? If yes, good. Like they say, there's nothing we can do. Do you go on insisting that this is very bad and create suffering for yourself? Or do you simply accept this is what is? How can I free myself from my enormous desire and longing for a spiritual love relationship with a man? Although I do understand my desire for such a relationship, after 25 lonely and painful years of marriage, during which I could not give myself nor my ex-husband the love and acceptance that we were both longing for, I feel at the same time that this desire is the biggest trigger of my pain body. Even during this beautiful retreat, my pain body is sometimes active for this reason. I'm aware of that. Since a long time, I feel a huge attraction towards a man. I hardly talked with him. I feel a strong attraction towards a man. I hardly talked with him because this attraction freezes me and makes me feel uncomfortable, because it feels almost unspiritual to have this earthly longing. Anyhow, these are the moments which keep me away from the now. Help needed. In brackets, haha. I'm very grateful to be with you. Thank you. That longing is in everyone. And as I mentioned earlier, it's to do with being this incomplete form. And this form wants to unite with the other half to complete itself. So you, as this physical form, may never be quite free of that longing. But as you go beyond identification with the physical form and the psychological form of me, that longing becomes an almost peripheral manifestation in your life. No longer makes you unhappy if it is not fulfilled. The psychological me uses that longing as a substitute for surrender. the belief that through some relationship I can complete myself. That the psychological sense of self, which also is not complete, the physical is not complete because the physical is one half of the whole. The psychological is not complete because it can never be in its essence. It exists in a state of lack, of not enough, of insufficiency, of needing to add more. And the one thing that the self, the psychological self, believes often will make me complete is the relationship with the partner, the ideal, the one. And that can keep you going, that search can keep you going for a long time, for the one human being who is going to complete me. On the physical, that pull remains. On the psychological, that longing for completeness is transcended, is gone beyond, as you no longer identify with a mental image of me, as you step out of identification with the mind-made self, which is always incomplete and will project its incompleteness in many cases onto that one thing that says, I would only, if I only had a partner, I would feel saved, totally myself, complete myself through him or through her. And if you should find a partner, for a while that may work. And then you find you cannot complete yourself through any form whatsoever. So what leaves you through surrender to what is, and which in your case might mean the feeling of great lack, the feeling of aloneness, the longing for him, you may not know who, and there's this great lack at the center of your being. And what do you do with that? That feeling of loneliness? If you're not vigilant, it becomes mind movements. It adds more to the story of the incomplete me who needs. And you can think about it, project, imagine, and that only strengthens that. But if you allow what you feel to be there, the let's say it's called loneliness. Feel it, don't resist it. That you may not even label it anymore. Simply be attentive. Look at it. No analysis. Just bringing presence to it. That feeling that you never wanted, that you want to get away from, that otherwise would continuously turn into thinking. Now, you're saying, there it is. And it has a certain feeling quality to it. And you can give it so much attention that you're not even labeling it anymore as loneliness. Your attention that you give that feeling is just complete. And your acceptance of that feeling is complete because it is now. It is the form that this moment takes. So you surrender into that. Say, all right, embrace it. and see if it kills you. It won't. It's not going to kill you. It's not going to consume you, but it might consume the ego if you surrender into it. So, and then suddenly you will see it is turned into something else. I don't want to put any ideas into your head and say this is what it's going to turn into. You surrender into that. The longing becomes intense aliveness itself. The longing, if totally accepted, and that is even the longing for God, which says, I want God so much. On the other side of the longing, God is already hiding. It's a misinterpretation through the mind. It says, you don't have it. It's not here. And the beloved is on the other side of the loneliness. You suddenly experience a sense of completeness because you've surrendered totally into that feeling. And then you have gone beyond the psychological need for a relationship to complete you. There may still be a physical need on the level of physical body, on the level of sexuality or emotion, that if you're a man wanting close to you the female energy field, if you're a woman wanting the male energy field, this form may have that, but that is relatively minor. It's a very small movement. But deep down, there's already such completion and completeness that that's a very minor surface movement of the form. Doesn't make you unhappy anymore. And then it is quite possible that you meet someone because you don't need him anymore. And then it is more likely that the relationship may work quite well because the need for this person to make you complete, which no human being could ever fulfill, it's an impossible task and an impossible demand. Every human being will fail, will not make you complete. So the need and the demand that this human being should provide that completion for you isn't there anymore. And that is why it is likely that the relationship may work quite well when the psychological, deep-seated psychological need is gone. Then if it happens, you welcome the relationship. If it doesn't happen, that's fine too. It's beautiful too. It's not everybody's destiny. And that's beautiful too, to be alone. Solitude is beautiful. Loneliness is not. Solitude is to be alone and to be surrendered into that aloneness. Solitude, beautiful, even sacred. Loneliness is to be alone and hate it and not wanting this. When you surrender into aloneness, it becomes solitude, and solitude even becomes more than that. It becomes a deep sense of connectedness with being itself. Because you had really been looking for God through somebody else. And it's only through surrender that you can find God. So this is your spiritual practice, to work with that. Not to find Him, that's not your spiritual practice. These are the moments which keep me away from the now, because that sense of incompleteness and lack still tends to become mind movements, so it keeps you away from now. But it doesn't have to be like that. The very feeling that you experience, let it bring you into the now. Give it attention. Embrace it. No need to run away from it. You welcome loneliness, and then it turns into something else. Beautiful. This mind-made sense of self is also much more focused on the negative than the positive. To be free, you awaken to who you are beyond your history and your life situation. Okay, I have so much to deal with here. I need to do that first, and then I can, when my plate is empty, because you have so much on your plate now, as the expression goes, and of course, the plate is never empty. Before they came up with all the digital devices, there was only the busy mind. So, creating one thought after another, keeping you trapped in content, the content of the mind, so that your entire life was content-based, no spaciousness. Of course, there was already television, has been around for a long time. And when I talked to Ariana Huffington last week, she said what she used to do for many years, the moment she opened the door to her apartment, she would turn on the TV news. So, come in the door, news. So that's one way of filling up your mind continuously, avoiding any moment of stillness, presence. And now, of course, the television has been around for a while, radio, and then came all the devices that we have now that can amplify the tendency of the human mind to live exclusively in the realm of content. So that you get continuous input of stuff, another word for content, so that you get the input from your emails and text messages, each one very, very important, and I'm sure much more important than this talk, according to the mind, more pressing than a talk about waking up. Or the mind is, I can do both things. I have developed the ability to text and email, and at the same time I know exactly what you're talking about. I could repeat, if you ask me afterwards, although I have been texting, I could repeat to you what you've been talking about. And this may be true. maybe you could repeat what I was talking about, and on that level you took it in, but you would have missed a much more important level, which is not the words, but an energy field that comes with the words. It is behind the words and in between the words. That's really it. And so unfortunately, you would miss that. So you would take only in the teaching on the level of stuff, because the words are also stuff, but it's a particular kind of stuff that points beyond stuff, not self-serving stuff. But if you only take it in as stuff, then it's just more stuff. Interesting, perhaps, or not that interesting. I heard that before. So I might as well send another email. And you wrote that in your book, didn't you? The now is so very important. I read that years ago. What else can you tell us? So I have plenty of time for more text messages because I've heard all that before. Okay. So that's one level of being here or not being here. So you would miss the more important dimension, because the words are secondary, and all the words really point to is a particular inner state. So while you listen, if it works for you, that inner state of spaciousness arises. But there you have to be really there with your attention, because it is the state of that spaciousness is the attention. It is the alert presence. So as you sit here, the alert presence needs to be there. This cannot be there if you are texting. Then you're only taking in the words, the information. So the most essential thing here is the alert presence. So all the words point to the alert presence. Sometimes the words point to obstacles that may arise to prevent you from being in the alert presence, so that when they arise you recognize them. That's fine. But the very essence of being here is a deepening of that state of consciousness, and the mind, the egoic mind, can very easily convince you that it has more important things to think about than presence. I've got so much on my plate. Interesting expression. I've got so much on my plate. I can't deal with this now, at present. Maybe when I've sorted out all the stuff that's going on, when my plate is empty, then I can deal with it. It's a very common mind pattern. Jesus already talked about it. He had these stories of a man who was invited to a wedding feast, and he comes up with excuses why he can't go to the wedding feast. And always what he says, or different people are invited and different people are asked, and each person has a different excuse. And the excuse always starts with the words, it's in the Gospels, the excuse always starts with the words, let me first, I have to sell my cows and my oxen, let me first sell my cows, let me first, even one sentence, let me first bury my father. But there's always, let me first do this before I can accept your invitation. The mind always said, well, okay, yeah, but let me first. And that is the mind pattern which says, okay, I have so much to deal with here, I need to do that first, and then I can, when my plate is empty, because you have so much on your plate now, as the expression goes. And of course, the plate is never empty. As you might have found, life gives you one thing after another. In that sense, the plate is never empty, but the emptiness can only be accessed within, in the present moment. As long as you get hypnotized by the excuses of the mind, then you can never access that dimension. So, quite amazing how the gadgets can amplify the tendency of the human mind to be continuously trapped in stuff. So before it was just, before radio and television, you just had your mind and you could talk to other people. And then came the beginning of devices, and now the digital devices, of course, you get bombarded. Most of humans, especially younger generation, some of the older generation too, get continuously bombarded with things that require your immediate attention. It comes through your phone, your smartphone, in the form of, phone calls, but even more frequently, probably, text messages, bing, bing, bong, bing. And they come in all the time and immediately go, oh. And then it requires a reply. And then emails, they can come in through all kinds of devices too. And then the latest postings on Facebook, your friends, very important. What they're doing right now. You need to know that. And they need to know what you are doing right now. It's so important. Oh, and Twitter. Tweets coming in all the time from all kinds of people. And you feel connected to these people. The youngsters get famous pop stars, you get their tweets continuously, things coming in. Oh, Justin Bieber is tweeting me, says the girl. Oh, wow. And that becomes continuously filled with, there's never a moment of spaciousness, because these devices amplify the tendency of the human mind to be reborn, the tendency of consciousness, one could say, to continuously be reborn into some new mental formation. And then people sleep at night, I hear, many sleep even with their phone on the pillow next to them or right next to the bed. And I read that when people wake up in the night, or the last thing before they go to sleep, they're still sending emails and receiving emails. But there is some hope on the horizon. I was told, when I was at the conference last week, in Wisdom Conference, where there are many people attending who work for these companies that engaged in digital producing or digital devices. I don't know how it all functions, but we were told that some companies now, for example, even in Germany, VW motor cars, Volkswagen, they give you company phones which are programmed to turn off at 6 p.m. and to turn on again at 8 a.m. That's wonderful. That's progress. That means there's some awareness here that the continuous engagement with these devices can be very harmful, and even companies are discovering that these things can be very harmful. So our alertness really needs to be there, and some discipline, so that we do not become the slaves of our gadgets. There are wonderful possibilities that are opening up through these. They're neither good nor bad in themselves. They're wonderful possibilities of connecting with people on a certain level. It's not necessarily the real connection, but on a certain level. And consciousness, news are no longer the exclusive. No longer can just big corporations disseminate news, which used to be the case. Anybody can now disseminate news, which is good and bad. It can be a wonderful thing. You can reach, if you have something important to say, you can put it on the net. It could go, as the expression goes, viral. And a few days later, millions of people, you've reached millions of people. It can happen. Now, in many cases, those things may not be very helpful that go viral. Often things that are particularly unhelpful for awakening go viral, but it could be something helpful. So we need to be very careful when we use these, have some discipline also, especially at night, so that we don't get this continuous input of stuff. It's only through the spaciousness that opens up, that the true recognition of being in whatever life form appears in front of you, that recognition of being is there. Being recognizes itself. It disguises itself in millions of life forms, temporary disguises, and you recognize. You look through the disguise, and sometimes the disguise is very strong. That's the play of the universe. You have to really, let's really disguise ourselves, and some humans are heavily disguised. God disguising him, her, itself very well. And with others, the disguise is not so heavy, but the heavy disguise is more challenging, it's more fun in a way. I'm talking about, of course, difficult humans. To recognize shared beingness in a flower is, of course, much easier because the disguise is far, far, far less. Much easier than to recognize the shared beingness when confronted with an angry human who says, "You!" But there's the space for that also. And you look, give him or her the space to do their act. And you don't need to react. Let them do their act, but you don't need compulsively to react, because if compulsively you react, you adopt your disguise again, and you continue to play your part in the drama or the dream of existence. All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players, or however else Shakespeare's phrase goes. So to recognize your essential beingness is such a simple. It's so simple that it becomes difficult for the complicated humans. It's such a primordial fact. And then consciousness recognizes itself, really, that's what it is. And that is joyful or blissful. And so the Indian teachers, masters, they string together 3 words and make it into one. Satchitananda, being, consciousness, bliss, to describe that state of connectedness, of oneness with being. It's very simple, too simple. And what you access also is intelligence itself, the unconditioned, out of which anything new arises, an insight, an idea. That is the place of true intelligence. I call it sometimes non-conceptual intelligence, or the unconditioned consciousness. And that's where suddenly creativity opens up in your life. Because the person is not creative. The mind is not creative, but it can be an instrument of true intelligence. And the mind has no intelligence of its own. It borrows its intelligence from universal intelligence. So the secret then is to not lose touch with who you truly are as you go about this world, seemingly participating in the play, but knowing at the same time, not conceptually, being the space and then pretending also to be the person while you do things. So you are the space while you talk to someone, listen to someone in spacious awareness. So you bring that dimension into the interaction. If you only did that, listening whenever other humans are talking to you, if you only did that, if you're able to use every opportunity whenever any human being talks to you, listen in spacious awareness instead of listening through mentally, immediately agreeing or disagreeing or thinking of the next thing you are going to say, or I know exactly what you need, let me tell you what you need, I know that already. But be there as an open field of aware presence. If you only did that, it would be enough to transform your life, your relationships with every human, because the old patterns would no longer be operating through you, would transform your relationships with all human beings, and of course will also help others without you feeling that you are helping, you're not doing anything, but it is an invitation to others, if there's the slightest openness in the other, to join you in that field of aware presence. And if they don't join you in that field of aware presence, it's fine too. But if that were your only spiritual practice, listening in that way to other you would be enough to transform your life. And if enough humans transform their lives in that way, then of course the world gets transformed. It's only a collective expression of the collective consciousness. Unless you live as a hermit, in other words, you never listen to anybody except your mind. And most of you are not hermits, so you interact with people, and every day you listen to people, you're on the phone. Well, unless you get so much into texting that you don't talk to them anymore. For teenagers, I may have to think of some other way of being if they don't talk anymore. No, it goes with your thumbs. You can see I haven't only had a phone for a few months of that kind, so I do like... So if that's your only spiritual practice, quite enough. Just the listening. Because whenever you listen, well, you are not there as an egoic entity. You're not bringing in your past. You're not even there as a person anymore. The person recedes and you're there as awareness. And it doesn't mean that now you can't talk anymore. No. It means then as you talk or reply or give your viewpoint, you very clearly realize that what you are giving is your viewpoint. You don't merge with your viewpoint, and then anybody who questions or attacks your viewpoint is considered a mortal enemy because you have confused who you are with a thought in your head, which is your viewpoint, which is insane.